Chapter 1, Part 2. Matthew Calreon, Lord High Priest, personal advisor and friend to the king, smiled at his friend's startled reaction. It was one of his favourite tricks. Many people often thought that he used magic to maintain his silence. Very few people knew that he'd begun his apprenticeship as a king's ranger, not the court magician. Then again, nobody really cared. "How could you do that to me?" said Nathan angrily. "You saw what I almost did to that creature the other day? My nerves are on edge as it is." "I'm sorry," replied Matthew, cursing himself silently. How could I forget that? It won't happen again." Nathan looked at him for a moment, and then began to laugh. Matthew stared at his friend, feeling a little puzzled. Usually he could read Nathan's thoughts as he would a book. Evidently, the incident had really unsettled him. "Are you all right?" he asked, anxiously. "Of course," said Nathan when he stopped laughing. "It was just the look on your face when you realised what I meant. I've never seen anyone go so pale so quickly." Matthew's face creased in confusion. It was then that he realised that he could feel the blood rush into his cheeks. In the heat of the moment, he had ignored the feeling of fear and panic that had gripped him when Nathan had mentioned the incident. He now realised how close he'd come to losing his head. His throat felt suddenly very dry and very tight. His arm also seemed to tingle, somehow, as if in recognition of the fact. He wondered if Nathan had thought that far enough ahead to consider what would have happened had he killed him. Matthew felt it wise not to bring it up at this juncture. His friend rarely smiled these days, let alone laughed. "I'm not surprised I went pale. You almost cut that wretched creature's head off," replied Matthew, his voice shaking. "Well, it was trying to assassinate me," replied Nathan in a dry voice, "and you weren't much help." "I had everything under control," replied Matthew, regaining his composure. "Eventually. Anyway, your flashing blue lights only have postponed the inevitable. It's going to die under the executioner's axe today. Chopping its head off then would have achieved the same thing," replied Nathan. "It would have also been a lot less trouble." "You know what purpose it will serve today. It will let those knights in the courtyard see the creature's true colours," replied Matthew wearily. He was growing tired of this old argument. "They will have physical evidence of the evil that scourges our land, and will be also able to see what we intend to do about it." "I'm still unsure about this. The last time an execution was made public, the king was removed from his throne by a mob of angry peasants. You know how they feel about them." "This isn't public. Besides, the creature isn't human," replied Matthew with forced patience. The peasants were not alone in their beliefs. Nathan's beliefs were often as strong and frequently stronger than those of his subjects. "What you're really saying is that you're scared that Tristan isn't far enough through his training to witness this." "The thought did cross my mind," replied Nathan. "He has only been King's Knight for 3 months. He still has regular doses of treatment, and he hasn't even begun to learn the ways of magic. For Toric's sake, we haven't even adjusted the ceremonial armour for him." "You know that the armour's all but finished," replied Matthew in irritation, "and he'll begin his training in the arts of magic soon enough. Once the treatment was finally thought those stupid superstitions out of his mind," he added silently. "You mean you have the results of the test?" asked Nathan hopefully. "Yes. He will be an adept student of sorcery." Matthew thought he saw a slight frown appear on Nathan's face. He knew how his friend felt about sorcerer's magic. However, the two types were very different, and a person was only usually able to use one form or the other. Only one person in recorded history had ever been able to wield both kinds of magic, and he was that person. And why that was, he did not know, but he could somehow use priestly magic and sorcery. But he was less adept at the priestly magic. No, the young man would have to study with him. Almost all the commanding knights were trained in magic, and that was what made their army so strong. In Caldor, sorcery was hated and reviled by almost everybody. It had also been made illegal. This meant that there was nowhere for wizards to study. In Kolth, there was a wizard's academy where those who spent with the spark of sorcery were trained. In Caldor, those people were rounded up and placed into the army. When they had been sufficiently trained and treated, they would then be raised into the commanding ranks. Here, they would be tested and taught how to use magic. This had many advantages. All armies employed the so-called war wizards. However, they were few in number and often weak in physical combat. In Caldor, though, all those capable of magic were enlisted and taught how to cast minor offensive and defensive spells. Many were also taught some of the more powerful spells. They could easily neutralize and overwhelm enemy sorcerers because of their superior numbers. Their magic was also useful in demoralizing and frightening troops. It was a brave army who could fight with the knowledge that the majority of their opponents could wield magic as well as the sword. Of course, this is all theoretical strategy at the present, as it had been kept a secret practice since the idea had been introduced, in order to prevent other nations from following their example and filling their ranks with spell-wielding warriors. Of course, not all of those enlisted were capable of sorcery. When a priest did the initial testing on naming day, it only indicated whether the infant was capable of magic. Only the extensive testing of the knighthood could determine which type of magic they were capable of, and many were found to be strong in priestly magic. Most of those joined the clerical orders of the church, although many chose to stay in the knighthood. "Are you still with me?" asked Nathan. Matthew cursed silently, bringing his attention back to his friend. His mind had a tendency to wander when he was tired, and he could often lose himself in his thoughts. He had lost whole days that way, and he had only been thinking about trivial matters. A dangerous habit, especially if casting spells. "Blood hellfire, I'm doing it again," he thought angrily, digging his nails into the palm of his hands. Thankfully, they were tucked inside the sleeves of his grey robes, so Nathan could not see. However, the tiredness reminded him of something that had been worrying him. "Lucas said that you were awake and dressed when he arrived. Is that true?" he asked with concern. "Yes," replied Nathan wearily. The old man is too fussy for his own good." "He was concerned about you," replied Matthew. "As am I. You know how your safety concerns me." He thought he saw Nathan rub his arm, but did not take offence. Now is not the time. "You need sleep." "How can I sleep with the evil that plagues me?" asked Nathan plaintively. Matthew just stood silently gazing at him with his arms folded. Nathan sighed. "If you must know, the potions are becoming less effective at keeping me asleep." "I will brew up a stronger batch this afternoon," replied Matthew, ignoring his friend's shudder. The matter had been decided years ago, but I think we had best attend to this morning's agenda. He started to yawn, but caught himself. Unfortunately, Nathan saw it. "Late night, was it?" he asked dryly. "Let me guess, you spent the night theorizing with your student?" "Yes, I spent part of the night discussing the mechanics of magic with Jalem," he replied with a sigh. "It was very interesting. It had certainly been that. As a young man was a freewielder, he had some very interesting ideas. It also meant that his progress was considerably faster than most other students. He was a joy to teach. Unlike the young King's Knight, teaching Tristan would be like teaching a cat to bark." "So that's why you keep going distant on me," said Nathan, breaking the flow of his thoughts. "You know, you really ought to get some sleep, or am I to order the servants to ensure that you drink one of your own potions each night?" Nathan's voice dripped with sarcasm as he said this. Matthew sighed in resignation. He had left himself open to that attack. He decided to make his life a little simpler and give in. "All right, I'll cut down on my late-night discussions with Jalem. Satisfied?" "Certainly," replied Nathan a little too smugly. Matthew was too tired for this. "Shall we go to the execution?" "As you wish, sire," he replied with a mock bow. They moved together, Matthew standing a little behind his king, and walked towards the dill. Matthew pulled the hood of his robe over his head, allowing his face to disappear into the shadows. He liked to maintain an air of mystery around himself, and the hood was only one of many such devices at his disposal. Nathan stopped by the door and looked back at him. "Oh, by the way," he said with a smile, "Malcolm's looking for me. Something about the next council meeting. Let's see if we can get down to the courtyard without Malcolm finding us." "If you can do that, sire," replied Matthew with a smile, "then I can move a mountain with one hand while pigs fly around the other." It was an old saying, but then it was an old game. They had never once succeeded in avoiding the weasel-faced little man when he was looking for them. Matthew suspected he would find them even if they were invisible. It was a theory worth testing one day, if it were possible to become invisible. It was one of the many things that people incorrectly thought the wizards could do. "Well, are you coming or not?" Matthew nodded briefly. He vowed silently never again to spend the whole night talking with Jalem. It had seriously affected his concentration. He hoped fervently that he would not be called upon to use his magic today. There was no telling what might happen if his concentration slipped. Suddenly noticing Nathan's irritated look, he dug his nails deeper into his hands and followed the king into the hallway.